All right, at the 1 o'clock hour, let's get you caught up where things stand with the UAW strike as we go into the second week and really looking at the impact of both President Biden and former President Trump heading here to the Detroit area to support workers. So joining me now is Nathan Bomey. He's a business reporter for Axios, but you will recognize his byline from USA Today and the Detroit Free Press. And he wrote a book on Detroit's bankruptcy called Detroit Resurrected. Nathan, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right, so as you cover the impact of the strike rolling into the second week, before we get into the politics of it all, tell me what you are looking at and what you're going to be watching for.
Well, I think with the UAW on Friday deciding to expand the strike to include all the parts distribution facilities at GM and Stellantis, that we need to start to watch to see when do dealerships start to run out of parts. This is the basically aspect of the automakers that delivers necessary parts from the factories to the dealerships to replace components that go bad on people's vehicles. So obviously dealerships have some parts on hand, but eventually and perhaps quickly they'll start to run out and consumers will probably start to get pretty upset that they can't get their cars repaired.
Yeah, because we hear from Sean Fain all the time that the public is behind us, that America supports us, and you wonder how long that message is going to last when all of a sudden people can't get their cars repaired and they're going to be waiting for stuff on dealer lots.
Yeah, and you also wonder when prices will start to go up of vehicles if the automakers start to run short. Obviously, they built up some supply in advance of this strike. They have some vehicles on hand. But when you talk about cars like the Jeep Gladiator, the Chevrolet Colorado, these are vehicles that could start to get impacted pretty quickly. And that doesn't even speak to the possibility that the strike could be expanded to other factories with other vehicles in the coming weeks.
All right, Nathan, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the politics. We have President Biden coming in here tomorrow. We have former President Trump coming in and having an event at night, of course, counter-programming to the Republican debate that's going to be happening at the same time. Interesting that, you know, typically we think about Democrats, blue-collar workers, and that's part of the vote. But now we have a very mixed political bag here.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan, obviously, as you know, I know as a native Michigander, is a battleground state, will continue to be a battleground state. And this we're seeing already here in 2023 with Biden and Trump basically battling to see who is most pro little guy. I mean, that's essentially what they're trying to do here, because with the fact that the average polls right now show that people are on the side of unions, you know, both President Biden and President Trump want to show that they're on the side of the union worker. Now, there's going to be much different messaging, though, because Biden's going to come and say, I am for record contracts and the record profits from the automakers need to start flowing to the average person. And of course, he also has his electric vehicle agenda. He wants more EVs, and that's an aspect of this as well. Now, the UAW is concerned about the EVs, and that's where President Trump is going to step in and try to say that to the auto workers that the president's EV agenda is hurting you as a union, hurting you as a worker. He's going to bash the UAW leadership and say that they're in bed with the president. And of course, you know, with the fact that President Biden's going to be on the picket line with the UAW tomorrow, that'll sort of help his message. But we'll have to see which message really resonates after this week.
It'll be interesting as well because, of course, the UAW has withheld their endorsement of President Biden. And if there is a prolonged strike, this could end up, and if President Biden continues to look for that kind of vote and that kind of support, this could end up backfiring for the president as well if this hits the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of risks here. I mean, the president has a problem because on one side, he has the really pro-union labor left that wants a really great deal for the labor, for the workers here. On the other side, though, he has the more climate change oriented progressive left that wants the president to be focusing on climate change and electric vehicles. The problem is, as you know, in Michigan, that the average electric vehicle does not take as many people to make as the average gas powered car. Why? There's just fewer parts. And so fewer parts usually means fewer workers. And so the UAW is very concerned about the electric vehicle transition. They're not saying they're against electric cars, but they say they want this to be an equitable transition. But the automakers are concerned that if they walk out of this with a contract that they can't afford, then they'll have to price EVs at a level where people won't be able to buy them, and that'll give an advantage to companies like Tesla.
Is there a potential downside for former President Trump coming here and speaking on Wednesday?
Well, I think that the president, is in a President Trump is in an odd position here because he's going to try to say he's pro-union worker, but he's against the union. It's interesting that he's going to try to thread that needle. He knows that in 2016 and 2020, about 1/3 of UAW workers voted for him. So that's a bit of an inside advantage for him because over the course of time, the UAW, I think, has become a little bit more moderate, maybe moderate conservative in some ways. And so he has an opportunity to appeal to the average worker there. But I think he also has to be careful not to be too aggressively anti-EV because the average worker knows that EVs are probably the future. And if, the automakers end up behind on electric cars, the jobs could go away altogether.
Nathan, are you going to be on any one of the president's visits this week?
I'm not. I wish I was, but we are going to have Axios reporters there on the ground, and people can subscribe to Axios Detroit to get updates on that as well.
Good stuff. Will do. All right, Nathan Bomey from Axios. Thanks so much for joining me. We're going to have you back. I really appreciate the time.
Love to do it. Thanks.
All right, it's good to see you.